Joining us today on the podcast is the boundary-pushing guitarist and musical innovator Dave Fiuczynski. Known for his fearless approach to the instrument, he seamlessly blends funk, rock fusion, Eastern melodicism, and Western microtonality. He creates a sound that defies genre. His remarkable versatility has led to collaborations with musicians such as Jack DeJohnette, Hiromi, and John Zorn, among many others. As the leader of Screaming Headless Torsos, he's been a major force in experimental music. A Guggenheim Fellow and professor at Berklee College of Music, he also founded Planet MicroJam, an institute dedicated to exploring microtonal music. And we are certainly thrilled to have him on the show. So, David, good to see you.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. We were just talking a little bit before about microtonality and how it's such an important part of who you are as a person. It's certainly, coincides with a different way of hearing. And, when we think about this, it's almost like when you're talking about one of the senses, we're talking about reality. And I was just curious if you think the music, the microtonal music, if that's changed the way you experience just the world in general outside of music.
Well, okay, I don't know if it's changed me because the first time I noticed that I apparently like stuff outside of the 12 note per octave system is compliment from a drunk fan after a gig.
Usually the drunk
Sometimes,
ones are the ones who are a little
I
rambling.
mean, sometimes they're like, they hone right in. And he was giving me all these compliments. He's like, man, I love the way what you do with the whammy bar and the way you bend it, and it's so cool and it's so because what you do is, and I could see he had this epiphany. Is like what you do is so out of tune. And and this is kind of like before I even experimented with anything microtonal. This was like early '90s in New York, and I thought, okay, I mean, there's a compliment in there somewhere. But I've always kind of naturally I like slurring with the whammy bar and so forth. I wasn't trying to do anything microtonal.
Mhm.
My first experience was in college. I briefly went to Hampshire College in Western Mass in Amherst. And I started to go through the college's music library, and listening to some Indian music, and I came across some kind of recording with an Arabic melody, and I thought, wow, I'm going to try and play this on guitar. And there I'm sitting with my 12 note per octave, fretted ruler, and I realized, wow, they have notes that we don't have. And I don't know, it may be easier to demonstrate. So let's see. I don't quite remember, but let me just give you something. So I think we all know, we've heard that before, Phrygian dominant, used in metal, or a lot of like so-called Latin music. So it's one with a flat two. This had a neutral two. It wasn't a flat two or a natural two. It was in between. The three was a little flat. The six was a little bit, the flat six was a little bit sharp. So it was some kind of like, so that note, if I isolate it, kind of sounds out of tune, but just like blue notes, if we isolate them, if I go, people are like, yeah, cool, but if you isolate them, it sounds terrible. So I realized that I kind of perceive this stuff as kind of an unorthodox Eastern blue notes. They would tug at my heart at the same way. And then, of course, I wanted to, since I couldn't just pick it up and play it, I had to learn, I had to study. So over the years, I've checked out Arabic, Turkish, Chinese, some Japanese either outright tuning systems or microtonal melodies that I analyzed. And I was like, wow, here's a whole new world. Here's a whole new stuff you can do if, and I'm always like curious, what if you, because in world music, there's not a lot of harmony. And I want to be very careful. I hate snobism. I don't want to be this Westerner. It's like, oh yeah, if you listen to Beethoven and Wagner and stuff, we're not. But it's a fact. There's not a lot of harmony. But what if you took these microtonal modes and then stacked them into chords? There's a bunch of new things you could come up with. And so where I think where we are at as a musical culture on this planet is a little bit the same way Western classical composers were at the end of the 1800s. So 1880s, 1890s, early 1900s, Wagner, Strauss, what have you, Mahler. It was getting more and more chromatic, and people were wondering, well, how far can you push this? Well, then, Schoenberg came along with his 12-tone concept and so forth. I'm thinking the mathematical possibilities of 12 notes, we're close to completely exhausting them. I predict there's going to be more and more lawsuits. No, I wrote that. No, I did it. It's just, if you're dealing with the same, if what do we have, like 7, 8 billion people on the planet? If billions of people since we had 12 tones since Bach, that was what, 1600, it's been a couple of centuries. You have billions of people messing around with 12 notes. At some point, all the possibilities will be exhausted.
I think, like there's certain things you can't copyright. Like you can't, like you can't copyright a circle or something vague, whatever. And we're in that point in music now almost. You
And
know what I
and
mean?
and and with microtonality, as Stephen James Taylor said, he's an amazing microtonal composer. He said right now there's more tuning systems than there are composers. So as I say in my microtonal class at the beginning of every semester, here's a possibility for you to do something that's never been done before you even leave school. I think that's exciting.
It doesn't get any more exciting than that, but it's also so what you do is also so accessible. I mean, I don't want to like equate that drunk guy who went up to you, but like I feel like someone who really loves Hendrix, you know, would love what you do as well because you can certainly were
Hendrix is
you
a lot
influenced
of
by
microtones.
were you influenced
People
by a
don't
lot of
think of blue notes as microtones, but Hendrix played a lot of amazing stuff that if you isolated the note, good luck finding those notes on the piano.
you were influenced a lot by him, you're saying a lot.
Um, Gosh, I was one of those idiots who was scared of Hendrix because I
Really?
saw some of my, yes, I was scared. I saw some people get sucked into him and then they couldn't get out. And when I finally investigated Hendrix, like in college, I was like, "Doe." I acquired so much of his playing through other players. I could have gone straight to the horse's mouth. But yeah, I mean, as they say, correct me if I'm wrong, but when it comes to blues rock, there's the era before Hendrix and the era after Hendrix. I mean, we're all. I mean, you listen to some of this death metal stuff, some of these lines, you go back to metal, and then you go back to heavy rock, and then you go back to hard rock, and then you go back to rock, and then you go back to blues. The blues is kind of the mother of all this stuff.
You know what I was curious about too? I mean, this is so great to understand where the interest comes from for you, but a lot of guitarists, they might be intimidated about, exploring, playing outside the 12 notes. So, do you have any advice to someone who wants to explore it, but where do I start? Like, what do you think is the best way to go about it?
Well, I could start you off where I started. I Googled the word microtonal. Um, the usual the usual gateway drug for microtonality is either, Westerners getting excited about world music and then realizing if we really want to play this stuff, we can't use 12 notes per octave. Or avant-garde 20th century classical music. I mean, as far as I know, I mean, some people have done a little bit exploring, but really microtonal composers, that's what they did, would be, as far as I know, Julian Carrillo from Mexico, Alois Haba from the Czech Republic, and Vishnegradsky from Russia. They started writing in quarter tones, six tones, and so forth, and then that's what they stuck to. Those are kind of like our classical microtonal grandfathers. And people, they start hearing like modern classical stuff, and then they happen to hear something, and then you get excited, you hear something cool, then you want to learn. So for me to be able to do this, I had to get a fretless guitar so I could approximate these notes, try and play these scales, try and build some chords.
I'm just curious too, really quickly. I'm sorry to interrupt, but someone I grew up with, his name is Jeff Mann. He plays in a band called Consider the Source.
Oh,
And
I know Jeff. Yeah, I played
oh,
with
okay.
him.
Yeah. I was curious if how small the world is when, because Jeff and I grew up together actually. So
Oh, nice. When next
yeah.
time you see him, big hug. They're
Yeah, yeah.
great.
So you've played
Well, Gabe was a student of mine.
there you go.
Guitar player.
You see,
Yeah,
I'm
he's
learning too.
awesome.
Great.
Gabe, if you're listening, you still need to slow down a bit. More space between your phrases. Lay back. He's
No,
great.
I'm sorry. Yeah, but you can go back to what you were saying. I just had to ask that really quickly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I I mean, I'm humbled. Gabe said kind of his whole concept was based off of a record I made called Keith.
Hmm.
And he's now branched out into his own thing. I'm not in any way taking credit for what he's doing, but yeah, wow, I'm humbled. So we did a little tour of we played a lot of they say they sometimes have themes. They do the music of Radiohead or something. So we did the music of Keith and they were great. Awesome.
Mm. It's a small world. You know, being that they're do you know what when musicians experience that thing when they can relate certain notes to colors?
Yeah, synesthesia.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
So I you mentioned my Guggenheim Fellowship. So
Sure.
I got the fellowship based on a proposal of transcribing because I really love Olivier Messiaen, the French composer who was influenced. He was an amateur ornithologist, so he would transcribe bird melodies and use these melodies as melodic and motivic material. So I decided I was going to do the same thing, but I was, as you may know, birds don't could give two hoots, haha, about 12 notes per octave. So I did a bunch of research, and there's like three really, I mean, I found six or seven really beautiful bird songs, and I transcribed them microtonally. I reached out to the birders who were in the field and recorded those bird calls, and I got permission to use them in my piece. So unlike Messiaen, I wanted the audience to hear the source and then hear how we played it and improvised off of it and so forth. So Messiaen was synesthetic. And the violin player on this piece, she was also synesthetic, and she had to write a color code for every scale. Even if I said, "Oh yeah, this is the same scale in a different key," she was like, "No, no, 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 no. In D, this is like gray, green. In A, this is red." So amazing. I'm not synesthetic, but art has a powerful influence. Like I love this purple black background, and the colors of your rabbit. It's awesome.
Thank you.
I love going to museums. I mean, I've been on the road, and then, here in Boston, I've been to the Museum of Fine Arts so many times. There are paintings that they're almost like friends. And to me, art is you look at something and each time you see something new.
Have you been to the Pompidou in France?
I've been there, yeah.
That's the most, that's the wildest place I've ever been in my life.
I mean, I made the mistake to try and see as much as possible. Not possible. I should have really picked my battles.
Yeah.
And I was really lucky that I was in a household that encouraged art. I mean, my dad was in business, but he would do these paintings. And
Oh,
my mom would do like these kind of like reliefs. I don't know if you can see that. So
yeah,
this is
that's
like
cool.
3D. And I don't know, maybe there's something wrong with my eyes because early on I was sun blind once and snow blind. Went on a school trip skiing, and one day it was just too much. I had to stay inside, lights out, with sunglasses on to
Oh
recover.
man.
And my parents, who love to travel, that was another thing. The best thing my parents did was, we moved to Europe when I was 8, and we traveled all. By the time I was done with high school, we traveled through. I'd seen most of Western Europe and parts of North Africa. In Morocco, I was playing, and 8 years or 10 years old. But the sun, there was another day where I had to stay inside. So I don't know, because sometimes I'm on the road, I would point out, hey guys, look at the sunset. This is amazing. And they're like, snore. Yeah, dude, it's another sunset. We've seen that. I don't know what it is. I'm not synesthetic, but colors and art, it makes a powerful impression. And I'm thinking like, I mean, I would be thrilled if I could express that black and purple in a chord. That's how I think.
That's amazing. You know,
It's amazing. Well, I usually fail, so.
no, no, no. This is great. I've never heard anyone say something like that before. You know, you've worked with so many of these great people, Jack DeJohnette, Marc Guiliana. I mean, the list goes on and on.
I've been
Who do you want to work with that just you haven't gotten, like if there's like maybe like a couple of people that come, I really want to work with this person that I just haven't gotten the chance.
Well, I mean, there's always the big names, but the problem is I need microtonality. I mean, if Herbie Hancock said you want to play, of course I'm going to say
Oh
yes.
man, I would love that.
But if you said my dream band, I would use former students like Uta Artun from Turkey, Georgi Mikadze from the Republic of Georgia, or Hidemi Akaira from Japan. These are some of the heaviest microtonal keyboard players in the world, and they can express the microtonal chords.
I just saw her, but I would have loved to see you been that band. That would have been so cool. Can I tag him in this interview, like in the post? And
Sure. Herbie, you need another keyboard so you can play more out of tune. I love you, bro, but
that's great. No, but I love how you said your students too. I mean, that just shows that, they're still, you think about them on the regular.
man, somebody who I would absolutely love to play with again is a former student. This guy, Dwayne, you may have heard of him. He goes by Mono Neon.
Oh, yeah, 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 of course.
Yeah, so he has this Southern Soul micro concept that he doesn't really do that much. And I'm like, dude, I understand. You do your thing. It's hard sometimes, but sometimes the most important thing in teaching is to shut up and step aside and get out of the way. With him, though, I was like, man, just here and there, can we do a little Southern Soul micro? He has this incredible concept where, again, microtonality, people, I mean, listen, the first time I heard microtonality, I thought it was horrible. I hated it. Afterwards, I actually went to one of the players and I tried to talk them out of it. I was like, what are you doing? Hey, what are you doing? Hey, 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 hey. But he puts in it, and he's so unbelievably funky. let's call it for what it is. He wasn't Prince's last bass player because he had a funky little outfit. I mean, he starts laying it down. I hear the grease dripping off of a barbecue. You know what I'm saying?
I love it.
But when he adds his microtonal stuff, it's on another level. And he does stuff microtonally I would never even think of.
I like how
I
you said
mean,
to one of the things with the students, but you were referring to getting out of the student's way in a sense. Is that what you meant?
here's one thing where I would love to get in Mono's way. I'm like, please, can we do more, and I would want to support him do his Southern Soul micro concept because it's just absolutely amazing. I wish, he would do more.
Yeah, we're gonna tag him too.
Please.
I mean, and that's the thing too. I mean, I feel like a lot of musicians there can be guarded when it comes to talking about this type of stuff. Who do you want to work with? They almost feel like not ashamed to say who they want to work with, but it's like, oh, you know what? I don't know. But that's just maybe the
I mean, I'd like to work with Dennis Chambers again.
yeah.
We had two opportunities that were slightly, I mean, I'd like to see what he would do in a microjam context. You know
So
what?
wh-
Maybe I should reach out to him and invite him to come to. But he's kind of the older generation, and I remember like talking to Dave Holland, and then I don't think they're into it. It's a different thing. They didn't like. I told you about the gateway drugs. There's a new gateway drug. I mean, a lot of my students are like, "Oh, can we do some King Gizzard?" Because they did some microtonal stuff.
mhm.
You know, that older generation, they didn't have any superstars doing microtonal stuff. Now, I mean, there's Jacob Collier with his microtonal challenge. There's King Gizzard. I mean, I never thought in my lifetime I would say the word microtonal and mention a festival like I mean, I think it was Coachella or something.
Coachella.
I mean, that's the top of the top of the top. And they weren't a side act. They were one of the main acts after Billie Eilish, and they did microtonal stuff. And, no complaints. No complaints. Here, let me turn off my mail program.
No, it's okay. And I know, you've been at Berkeley for quite some time now. Um, are you still just as excited about teaching as you've ever been, or have you had to adapt because the technology?
You know what? Hiromi said something very interesting. It kind of bummed me out a little bit. I started teaching at Berkeley when I was 38. And I got some vibes from some teachers. They treated me like a student.
Probably my teacher.
No, no, no. I don't know who it is. And
Well,
that's not
he's
the
no, he's
point.
passed away, so.
But, and I mentioned this to Hiromi, and she said, well, the thing is, you always show up with your instrument and you're really excited. And, I looked younger, and I guess some people thought I was a student. Yeah,
The new cop who comes in onto Forest and wants to shake things up, as they say.
I you know, I I guess I like shaking trees.
Yeah,
And
but
and
you're still just as enthusiastic about it.
I mean teaching can be, it is hard work, but wow, when you get to work with people like Mono Neon, the bass player Evan Marion,
Yes, yes, I do.
Nikki Glaspie, I mean her first gig out of school was playing with Beyonce. Wow, I mean, and so I can mention so many more. That's when teaching, it's not a job anymore. It's like a privilege. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you get into the space where you're just in that creative flow.
And I'll admit, I kind of started teaching not with the greatest attitude. I heard some teachers like, "Oh, I learned so much from my students." I was like, "Yeah, shut up, little brat. What am I going to learn from you?" Wow, I learned for example, Locrian, minor seven flat five. When I started like I realized I kind of just flubbed through it.
Yeah.
The students say, "Well, what do I do with Locrian?" Well, I mean, seventh mode of major, and then you do this, and then you do, and then I was like, "Oh shit, what do you do?" So I had to kind of re-upload Locrian 2.0.
Yeah,
And in the
relearn it.
process of teaching, I was like, wow, I really got it down so much better. In terms of microtonality, again, especially the students, I mean, someone like Mono Neon, who is just such a thirsty mind, but like Utar Tune from Turkey, I mean, Utar has more degrees than I do. And he graduated from the Istanbul Conservatory. And he studied, I think, classical and traditional music. He knows Turkish music so much better than I do, hands down. But the concept I laid on him, he was like, wow, this has helped me organize my Turkish music ideas in a completely different way. But I learned that by interacting with him.
Yeah, I
I'm
love
not
it.
sure if I should say this, but sometimes people are like, so how's Berklee? I was like, well, I don't know about the students, but I'm learning a whole lot, man. Yeah.
Dave, this has been great. I'm so glad that you wanted to do this, and I really hope that when I tag the other, Herbie, that maybe if you play with them, please get me a ticket to the gig. I get
Okay, so let me do Herbie, Dennis Chambers,
Mono Neon again.
Mono Neon. God, I need to reach out to Rudy Royston.
I'll
Let's see,
tag him too.
who else would I? Well, Chicory is gone, unfortunately.
No, I love it. You're the man. Thank you so much for doing this.
Here's the thing, if I could just lay on. I
Yeah.
sometimes get this all time. Um, here's kind of like my top 10 not possible on a desert island. I would love to be in a group with Miles Davis, Jimi Hendrix, and Thelonious Monk. Things that never happened. I would have loved to have seen Monk with Miles, and also, well, Hendrix, he jammed with Miles once.
Yeah, there's some tape of it, they say, or
Yeah, but like a record, that would have been amazing.
yeah. No, thank you so much, Dave.
Thank you. Too short. Let's do it again.
We have to.